I've always gotten a lot from listening to him, and we're excited to have him, and I appreciate everybody taking a part of their nights to come out and join us. So, Mike Appleby, thank you.
And most importantly, I'm free. That's what he didn't do. He didn't lob that one in there. So you really charge these people to be here? Oh yeah, okay. Well, thanks for being here today. So we're going to spend a little time working ourselves around local, Puget Sound, and a little bit of national, but mostly national is just talking kind of about economic stuff. And gosh, yeah, I've been one of you for years and years. I've got 3 decades into real estate investment as well as title insurance, and probably started 4 different title companies over the years and built them. And feel good about kind of where we're headed in the Puget Sound, because Rob said, now you're going to say something nice, right? And I said, absolutely, because I've always believed in real estate. I've purchased real estate for over 30 years, probably bought, sold, and finished and done work for over 500 properties. So it's something that's all the way down inside. And the one thing that I learned a long time ago is learn what you suck at and don't do it again. And I have a wife and 2 daughters, so that's a daily reminder of what I suck at. And so I know that we're going there. And it's no different than me trying to invest in stocks. I just knew it was something I wasn't going to track, and I felt it was like, hey, I might as well put the money on black or red and hope for the best, because I probably had a 50-50 as that as well. But a couple of things I wanted to update you on. We spent last week, I sit on, and I'm only sharing this with you, so I sound important if I screw the rest of this up. So I think what we've spent a lot of time on, most people don't really understand that real estate has nothing to do with whether we need it or whether we need more places to live. It has everything to do with politics. And I hope you guys understand that. I remember over 20 years ago, we were in Snohomish County, and we had a council group that 2 of the members decided that they were going to put a moratorium on all home building in all real estate development, and they did. So they stopped all development in the entire county for almost a year. So we decided, hey, we need to get organized. This isn't working very well. We're not making a living, and almost 25% of our jobs in all of northern Snohomish County were construction related. So we put groups together, a lot of groups, and we unelected them. Is that the best way to put it? And figured out that, okay, things will work well. And so in those jurisdictions now, we've put 54 ordinances in a row in front of our county council, and they voted yes on 54 different ones in a row. That's a pretty good record. So we really feel good about that. Now, I don't even want to try to get into King County. I know that the country of Seattle is really not the right place for us, and we've tried over and over again, and it hasn't gone well. So we'll fight the battles we can fight. But a couple of things happened this last week down at the state. I sit on the state BIAW, which is a Building Industry Association of Washington. I sit on that state board. Sit on the Affordable Housing Council, which is just a fancy name for how we interview, how we endorse, and we meet with every possible city, county, school district, water district, sewer district, you name it, we meet with them. And if they have anything to do with voting for housing-friendly issues, we try to help advance their run by funding them. Does that make sense? So we do a lot of different races, and we work obviously in 2-year cycles and spend up to $500,000 every 2 years. It's a large lobby for your building industry. And then I sit on Snohomish County Tomorrow, which is another board that's land use related. We vet all the land use issues in Snohomish County, and then we endorse or deny, and then hand that over to the Snohomish County Council, and that's their excuse to say yes or no and say, well, those guys told me not to. That's really, I think, what it is. But that's kind of all the land use stuff. So a couple of good things happened last week down at the state level, and we're still working on one. Condo reform, remember condominiums, right? They have them in Palm Springs and every place except here now. if you take a look at what's been going on, we've been in a situation liability-wise where we have lost the ability to create condominiums. And you could literally do a whole hour on what did or didn't happen there. But I would tell you that in the last 10 years in King County, which is arguably the best, well, not arguably, it has been for literally 5 straight years, we led appreciation in the entire country. 5 straight years in a row. So obviously up until this last year. But during that period of time, during that 10 years, we actually recorded only 2,000 condominiums, 200 a year, in a marketplace that used to have 2,000 listings of condominiums every month. So because of the liability change, everybody said, I'm not doing it anymore. And so we lost that as a part of our affordable housing model. And it really, really did hurt our marketplace. So two of the issues that were coming up was the way the condo laws were set up. If I'm a construction contractor liability attorney, I contact the homeowners association for the condominium the minute it's filed. I track the filings at the state level for the nonprofits for the homeowners associations. I see them, I send them a letter with a disc, and now I'm not knocking what people do for a living. Everybody does what they do, but it was kind of a situation where then I go meet with the homeowners association and I tell them that, remember, if you don't sue this contractor immediately, that you're liable. You're personally liable for not doing it if something happens later. So what do I do as a homeowners association? I'm like the assistant manager at Bartels. I don't want any part of that. I just say, you bet. And so then they start the lawsuit. So in this bill that we're going to hope gets signed next week, because I think we're just about there, it's in executive session right now, and we've lobbied it forward with the trial lawyers, attorneys lobby, that we feel we have a pretty good meeting going. And so we think that'll get signed off where no longer is the homeowners association board personally liable. It's a big deal. The second part of that bill said that what would happen was I didn't have to have any cause to sue the contractor or the developer. I could sue you just because I wanted to sue you. That's all there was. You didn't have to show that your windows leaked, your roofs leaked, your siding leaked, or anything buckled. I just sued you anyway, and then we started tearing the building apart. So if you were going through Seattle or Bellevue or any of those places and you'd see a new building go up and you'd see the tarps go up around it immediately and you go, gosh, that building was built incorrectly. No truth to that. The insurance company ended up covering that because the attorney could file a lawsuit against it even though there was no fault. So we've changed that. And hopefully they've agreed to that, and I think they're going to. So now you actually have to have a reason to sue someone. Pretty novel idea, right? I always felt like it's like my neighbor's a bad driver. I know they're going to run into me someday, so I'm going to sue you now just in case. I'll collect in advance, just in case you hit me later. And it's almost the same idea. I'm going to tear your building apart. If you, let's say you nailed off at 7 inches rather than 6 inches, I'm going to make you re-nail the whole building and start over again. So now you actually have to show fault. We feel pretty good about that. The other bill that we feel really good about that we squashed was the ones that now a contractor, there was a bill in front of the House and the Senate that said that the contractor would now be liable for all benefits, salaries, and anything that was done by a subcontractor on the property they're working on, even though they were a subcontractor. So I'd have to pay all the benefits and salaries for my subcontractors if they don't get paid on my site. A little scary. That was close. So that got squashed. So we feel for the first time in a long time like we've actually got some leverage moving forward, and we'll keep working on the condo bill, but or on condo reform, but we really feel good about that because we really feel like now some of those insurance companies won't look at it the same way. Lenders won't look at it the same way on their construction lending, and they won't feel like they're going to get sued no matter what, so we feel like maybe that's a part of the market we're going to see moving forward. And we actually are. So what started to happen already is in King in Bellevue, Seattle, and in those areas, remember we've been doing 200 condos a year in the best marketplace in the country, which is horrible. And now we've got almost 6,000 applications in for future condominiums. Now, part of that was the fact that we've overbuilt the apartment market, so we switched it to condo rather than apartment. But we've got 5,000 unit of applications in Seattle and another 1,000 units in Bellevue right now to build. So, well, a studio is still going to go for 600, but we still feel good about the fact that there's something under $1 million, right? So let's talk a little bit about, now, are you the official clicker?
No, I got you one. Here we go. So you're ready to go. Unless
Oh,
you want
wow.
me to be it.
No.
There you go.
Well, I'd appreciate you doing it for me. I'll do it, though. This is nothing. I actually had to officiate my daughter's wedding this last weekend. It was nice, but I was white-knuckled. I thought for sure I was going to screw that up. So let's talk about a few things that have been going on. Some trends. So here's a couple that I thought were interesting. And this didn't happen even a couple years ago, but keep this in mind as a home builder. 15% of all buyers, one of their strongest things was they felt strongly they needed to be near green space or a veterinarian. That's a huge jump for their four-legged children, obviously, but that is one of the things that was even 2 years ago, was maybe 5%. The percentage of homeowners with children under 18 is at its lowest number since 1960. You'll see why here in a minute. A couple more trends for you. 70% of all management now checks out its prospects on Facebook. So if you don't think you're involved in social media, get involved. 97% use online previews when checking out consumer choices. If I'm going to go to a movie, I'm going to go to a restaurant, I check it out online now. We just changed the way we're doing things. In 2008, the real estate industry spent $30 million on technology, and in 2017 and 18, they spent $10.2 billion. So we're moving forward in that area without a doubt. Traffic, you know, the interesting thing about traffic is we keep squeezing people into counties, and because of growth management, we're going to squeeze them into a tighter area, right? You're going to grow inside those lines, otherwise you're going to be on 5 acres. The more interesting thing is the freeways have been the same size since when? 1965. You know what the #1 most congested, I don't mean bronchial, I mean congested like traffic-wise in the country? You're close, I'd like to think so. Well, Seattle is 2, 5, or 9, depending on whose website you're looking at. But Everett, Washington. So I got to drive through it at least 4 times a day, so I'm very well aware of it. So what happened is if you take the size of that city at about 100,000 people, 110,000 people, and you take the average time it takes to drive through that city based on population, and you calculate it up, it actually takes longer based on the size of the city. And Seattle's going to get worse because if you think about it again, we've added an HOV lane, but reality is the freeway is the same size it was in whatever it was, 1965. So therefore, our problems there won't change much. Let's move forward. You stared at my name long enough. So I thought this was really interesting. Now, I actually asked this question, and I didn't put up on top what it was for price appreciation, and I just stuck the names out in there. And I taught this class in Seattle one time. Now, this was the prediction for 2018 of Devos, which is a analytics website that deals with real estate values. They were picking these 5 markets as to be 5 of the top 10 markets in the country. And no offense, I live in Stanwood, so we're all the same, okay? I didn't put the top on there. And I asked this question in Seattle, and the first guy raised his hand and said, I said, well, what do you think that is? What do you think the increase is? And he said, the sale of Birkenstocks is what he told me his answer was. So they have a thought about what we do up here or how we live. So what happened here is Seattle didn't come anywhere close to that, right? We didn't even on that same planet. But we were #1 in Seattle for, again, 3 years in a row. And then at the end of last year, we were #1 in the country for 3 months for the fastest decline in pricing at the end of the year. Mount Vernon, it actually happened. They're about 10% appreciation. You know why? Affordability. And the #1 employer in, well, it shouldn't be, but it is. The #1 employer in Skagit County is the government now, but on and off it's been Boeing. Because that's the one place I can go if I work at Boeing at my wage level, and I can buy a new home for my family and afford it. Tacoma, if you can believe that. Tacoma was in the top 10 for price appreciation in the country. They just weren't a big enough city to make the major cities list. I did this just so you can see. Has affordability starting to be a problem for young couples? Maybe around the rest of the country? I thought this was great. Don't get me a salad spinner. I don't need another tablecloth, and I really don't need those dishes I use once a year. Just do a home funded, feather the nest, GoFundMe, honey fund, and put the $100 in my fund and we'll buy a house with it. Not a bad idea. Just a thought pattern. I tried to do that for my daughter when she got married. She goes, no, I'll take the China. We're fine with the China. So I want to talk a little bit about, because I don't always want to make the prediction, because I don't think that's fair. Because I've always been excited about real estate when it comes. Excited might not be the right word, but I always look forward to it being a long-term investment tool, and probably the best one I could possibly think of, as long as I don't screw it up and go try to sell it, mess with it. So the experts weighed in. So the National Association of Realtors expects sales to increase this year by 1%, and the median home price to go up by 3.1%, and again in 2020. Realtor.com, 2% decline in home sales, but price growth of 2.2%. They're going to be way off on interest rates. We'll talk about that. Redfin, price growth settling around 3%. Zillow, mortgage rates, they're going to be way off. Home values will grow by 3.79 nationally. Okay. National Association of Home Builders, new home sales around 628, basically the same as 2018, and we feel pretty much the same here, other than our growth management is squishing our availability to create the product. Single family construction. Mortgage Bankers Association, 30-year fixed, they're going to be off on their own rates. Caldwell Banker, locally 4 to 6% increase in pricing, somewhere between 5 to 7 is more our thought pattern. Fannie Mae, 4.7% increase in price nationally. KW, 4% increase in price nationally. I just wanted to make sure you understood that almost every website you go to, every expert you talk to, they're going to see an appreciation in price. And remember, we act a little bit differently than the rest of the country. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way. We are a little isolated from the way other people do it. And it has a lot to do with our business pattern. It has a lot to do with our technology corridor. If you take a look at all the technology companies and the startups through the central Puget Sound area, you'll see that most of them don't make money. But it doesn't seem to matter. Now, I'm not sure I understand the concept there, because I got to make money every month. But the idea is that I'm building something I'm going to sell later. So my investors are going to take it on, and then as we get ready to sell 10 years from now, they make their 500% increase in their value, and then they sell. So we don't always have to make money in some of the businesses we're in. This, I thought, because the R words popped up quite a bit here lately, and I thought it was worth spending a couple of minutes on it to talk a little bit about it. So 25% of economists, which in my mind is a little bit of a guess anyway, feel that there's a possibility of a slight recession in the back half of 20, but a light recession. I'm not sure what a light recession is. It almost sounds like you're kind of pregnant. I mean, I'm not sure if there's such a way of putting it, but we'll go with it. Another historical study shows that every 8 years after a spike, we go into some level, even if it's a slight recession, and that would put it out, if we had one, back out into 2023, 2024. And if you look historically, all the way back to literally the 1700s, it follows a pattern there as well. Here's one that's really scary, and not because it looks like a weird chart, but we have suffered from a lack of ability to put units into the world. Now, it seems like all the units they're talking about are in downtown Seattle right now, but the reality is, if you take a look at some of these things, in 2017, we were 370,000 fewer homes than we needed to be built. In 2018, we were almost the same number, backwards, upside down in the number of units we need just to produce, to handle those people that actually live here and get 2 of my kids to move out of my basement sooner, if that's the best thing. So in 1968, where are we at? So you can see the numbers. In 2010, we don't have a number that goes back that far, because the chart shows you that our numbers are off in 1959. So in 2010, and so now we're up into 2018, and we're still not producing the correct amount of units And we're still in the same production level as we were back in 1959. Don't you think that's hard to believe? I still think it's hard to believe. So it's 60 years ago is how many units we were putting in the ground. Same thing goes for single family. You can see now that we've kind of caught back up with some of these marketplaces, but we're all the way back into the 80s. So we're still not producing enough units. It literally takes 1.2 million units just to house all the people that either move here or are born or move out of our house that need housing. I want to talk a little bit about some of our local markets and some of the things we see that are going on. And Skagit is a really unique market. And I don't mean because of tulips or it's in between this or that. It's just the age group in Skagit. Now, the median age being 42, that's like 6 years older than the median age in almost the whole country. Now, that doesn't sound like very much, but it is a huge thing. That's a huge anomaly if you're taking a look at different statistics. And so I went through a couple of counties to try to figure out what the difference was. Do you see that right there? I've never seen that before. I've never seen the largest age group in a county be 65 to 74. Now I know when I do talks in Skagit County, everybody's asleep in 25 minutes, and they can't hear a word I say. I'm the youngest guy in the room. It's the greatest talk I ever make. Let's make sure I do this correctly now. There we go. Our number 2 age group is 45 to 54, which is another anomaly. Our number 3 age group is 35 to 44, and our number 4 age group is 25 to 34, which is supposed to be the largest home buying group in the history of the United States. But the idea that 65 to 74 moves us all the way down to normally the number 1 group anywhere else in the country is a unique marketplace. Now, we do probably 60% of the closings in that marketplace. And the saddest part for us is, I would tell you, and it's hard to believe, but somewhere between 25 to 30% of every one of those closings come out of an estate or a death. Now, that's really unique because most of the time you're 5 to 8% in the other marketplaces we're in. Put this up here, largest group of housing units by year built. Oops, we jumped past the one I wanted to talk about. There we go. 1990 to 1999. So the most units that were built in Skagit County were in that 10-year period. Our 2010 to 2019 that arguably you could build just about as many as you want and still put people in there and still sell them. It's only 4.8% of that marketplace. Skagit is so underbuilt right now, and there's not much we can do about it, but that's where we're at. 1940 to 1949 is the last year that we only produced that number of units. 1940, there was a war, right? That's the same amount of units we produced there 70 years ago. 46,423 housing units, 31,000 owner-occupied. 50% of those are paying $500 to $1,000 in rent, 35%. So 85% of that market pays under $1,500 a month for rent. Underpriced market for rental. Starving for apartment product there. I take a look at Island County, and you go down to Oak Harbor, and you take a look at the fact that we've got 3 or 4 squadrons in there now, and they're going to bring 3 more in, so they'll have 7 squadrons. We've got nobody building anything. I think we've got 1 60-unit apartment building in the entire market, and no one's doing anything to house the people. Most of those people from those squadrons, the 1,900 people, will have to drive to Burlington to live, to get back and forth from the base because we don't have any housing there. And I've talked to quite a few guys about making that move up there, and they tell me the same thing. I'm making too much money in my marketplace, and where are my subcontractors going to be for me to build any size product? But there's a great opportunity in the north end for a lot of housing to be built. Let's keep moving. Let's go Whatcom County. Estimated 221,000 people, median age right there, 36, there we go. About 34,000 are seniors, which is a pretty good market. 5th largest group is the 65 to 74 with 23,000, right? Number 1 age group is right where it should be, 25 to 34. It just feels like, a college town usually, and again, you're not really a college town, but you've got a big college. And normally you see population in that group, somewhere in the 20 to 25 range, but it sounds like, thankfully, you're getting the people to stick around for a little while and get a job. Number 2 age group is 45 to 54. 20 to 54 is 104,000, almost half of the marketplaces within that home buying group, right square in the middle. 58.6 of single females rent, 53.7 of single males rent, 81.4% of married own. If I'm a marketing guy, I'm at the church every Sunday waiting for a wedding. If I'm going to look for listings, and I think I'm on Christian Mingle or something else soliciting buyers, and I'm going to get there sooner or later. They might figure me out and realize I'm a serial dater, but I think a lot of people are sitting there, and around the country, 20 to 31% of all renters now can afford to buy. Okay? Number 9 in Washington as far as population goes. This is an odd one, but I'm going to spend a couple of seconds on this and we're going to keep moving. But it's weird. It's another anomaly that's gone on here lately. Home equity is at or near an all-time high at 25.7%. So homeowners have 25.7% equity. Now that's usually a sign for selling, but it's turned the other way now. People are staying in their home a lot longer, and you can see from these charts here that the home ownership is kind of the fence line looking picket fencey deal, and that's the technical word for a bunch of close lines together. So it used to be at 4 years on a regular basis, and obviously in the last 10 years that has spiked. So now that you're almost up to a 10-year average on how long people are staying at their home, and that's changed over, just like I said, the last 10 years. We're not obviously building like 2005 to 2007 for saleable units, so obviously our supply is starting to shrink. They feel that we're undersupplied nationally about 2.5 million units. We never made up for 2008, 9, and 10 when we went backwards, and we haven't been able to put enough units back in the system again. Here's one that kind of hits you a little bit closer to home. More than half of existing homes are owned by baby boomers and silent generation. That's the people we're going to list. The highest in 18 years, almost 19 years. Before 2007, obviously, the length of time you lived in your home was stable at about 4 years, and then obviously in the last 10 years, it's jumped up to almost 10, and obviously as of 2018, we're at 10 years. Seniors aging in place. Does this make sense to you? At what it costs to go to assisted living and some of the other costs involved in getting out of your home. Seniors aging in place rather than selling their homes. 1.65 million people now that normally would have sold their home and put it in the market, but because of the cost of other types of housing, they've decided to stay. So 1.1 million of those are 78 to 88 years old. So that's the biggest group now that they've ever had of home ownership in that 78 to 88 year bracket. I can't afford to go someplace else. I need to stay where I'm at. This one, there's a few of you out there. I see you. So 66% of millennials think home buying is a great long-term investment. 72% say affordability is keeping them out. Only 40% can afford a median home price in their area, whatever that area may be. Renters in Seattle now take 13 years to save a 20% down payment. I've never seen one put 20% down, but there you go. It will take 2 years and 4 months for them to save 3.5% down based on their housing costs. It used to be that you needed to keep your housing costs at about 35 or 36%. In that King County marketplace, the average housing cost for somebody renting is over 41%. That's what it's gone up to just in the last 2 years, 41.1 of their income. And again, it should be at 36%. The Seattle buyer median income is now at $114,000. So if I'm a buyer in Seattle, my median is $114,000. But if I'm a renter, my median is $54,000, less than half. But the median income for all citizens in that centralized Puget Sound marketplace is now $82,000. Around the rest of the U.S., the typical renter, this is a unique one, around the rest of the U.S., the typical renter takes one half of the time to save enough money to actually buy a home as they do in our marketplace. So the rest of the marketplace isn't suffering. The U.S., 1/3 of people are renters. In the Seattle market, over 1/2 are. And if you take a look at some of the demographics that show locally, at the number of homeowners we have here, we're not following the same pattern, obviously. The number of renters we have is quite a bit lower, and the number of homeowners we have is quite a bit higher. So 55% of mortgages last year were to first-time home buyers. Of the single millennials, the single millennial buyers, 62% are men and 32% were women. And that's completely the opposite of the rest of the market. It used to be couples were always about 60% of the market, 62%, and women, or excuse me, men were about 18% of the market. But in the last 5 years, men have gone down to about 8% of the market, and now single women are 18% of the market because we can't get our credit straight. There's just no way for us to figure it out. I mean, we like shiny objects, we like big trucks, we like big TVs, and we just buy them on time because that's kind of been our gig. So you'll see that change coming up as well. The largest demographic increase in millennials is the unmarried couple. And you'll continue to see that because, look, the market is running away from me price-wise. I'm worried about mortgage rates. I am not living in this apartment anymore. We're going to go buy something, and we're not going to wait to get married. We're just going to buy. If that makes sense? So it's been get it over with now and get married. But that group right there, this group right in here, that is the largest home buying group in the history of the U.S., over 10.2 to 11 million people. That's the group that within 2 years is going to be at that median age for first-time home buyers, and they'll be in that buyer pool. So if you don't text or Twitter or Gitter or pick something that they call it, you should, because that's how you'll communicate. You won't have conversations like you used to. Okay. Where am I at? Oh, there we go. I'm going to put this one up here just real quickly so you can see. We are, as population goes, we are big time. We're the only snow state, that's the only way I can put it. We're the only snow state that has actually continued to see an increase in population, because if we're going to talk about housing, we're going to talk about jobs, and we're going to talk about population. All the other increases were warm states, right? Annual in-migration, well, I guess the fastest way for me to put it, Seattle in 2016 was the fastest growing major city, right, in the country. And it's been the fastest growing major city since 2000. I mean, that's a lot of years and a lot of cities, right? And a better way to probably put it so we can kind of calculate it, if I were Snohomish County, for example, and I've got 801,000 people, in the next 15 years, I've got to figure out where I'm going to put 200,000 people, because that's where the population is going to go just in 15 years. Now, if you remember, just to kind of put a square around that, we had a little bump in the market in 07. Remember that little one? Okay. So that's 12 years ago now. So literally just in that time frame, I would have had to have built, and just to kind of qualify it, Everett's about 110,000 people. Marysville is our second largest city. We're proud of that. And then Edmonds is 45,000 people. That's about 220,000 people. So in the next 15 years, we have to build another Everett, Marysville, and Edmonds to house the people that say that they're going to be in our county. In the Puget Sound area, here's a worse one. Remember, we're not making the freeway bigger. Just remember that. In the Puget Sound area, 1.2 to 1.6 million people over the next 20 years. Seattle's a little bit short of 800,000, 750 to 80,000 people. So in the next 20 years, you're going to have to build 2 Seattles. In the next 20 years, you got to build 2 Seattles to be able to put these people, put a roof over everyone's head that's going to be here. We are bringing people in. We're jobs. We're all about jobs. Puget Sound, there we go. Let's get on to this one. So jobs. Now, I'm going to go a few different counties, and then we're going to spend some time just specifically on Skagit and Whatcom for sure. So Snoco has about 300,000 jobs, and we have about 430,000 workers. And I'm not a math genius, but that sounds like somebody's going out someplace else to work, or they're sitting at home. But we've figured out that almost 160,000 commuter trips go down to Seattle every day just for jobs out of Snohomish. Now you know why the light rail thing is coming our way. Approximately, like we talked about, 150,000 commuter trips, and that county added 6,500 jobs just last year. There's 1.466 million jobs in King County right now. That's 44,000 more jobs than it was the year before. That's an increase of about 3.1%. That's 44,000 jobs. That's an entire county for most counties. 41,000, we talked a little bit about that. Washington's 55 and older population. The standard population group on 55 and older is 10%. It's 22% now. So I think our real estate world got a little bit upside down, so we're working again a little bit longer. So we've over doubled the 55 and over population for jobs because of our, I hate to say it, maybe our real estate didn't go the way we wanted it to. Here's a weirder thing. Nationwide, there's 7 million job postings and 6 million unemployed people. I've been thinking maybe we should tell that guy about that job over there and have him move, well, anyway. Talking a little bit about where we're at unemployment-wise. Whatcom County, preliminary numbers, 5.5% unemployment. Skagit County, 6.3%. Island, 5.9%. 5% unemployment is called full employment. Because of transitioning or whatever else is going on, you're literally at full employment. Whatcom County, for 2018, the employed increased by 3,900 to 114,000 employed. 1,962 are unemployed, and our total jobs went up by 2,700. Okay? In Skagit, 2,046 were added to the labor force. We're up to 61,000. Sorry about the numbers, but what I really want to accomplish here is that 1,400 more jobs were added in Skagit County. At the same time, both of those counties went backwards on government jobs. So those are private sector jobs we're adding. Island County added another 290 jobs, but it's up 2%. And San Juan County must have opened a Starbucks because they added 30 jobs. And so my positive part of that is, and a lot of those jobs are seasonal, but they all increased. You still with me? All of the employment situation increased, and they don't expect it to change much this year as well. Homeownership rate. We're going to hit this just for a second. Housing affordability, renters index. It's a lot of words. Compares income levels of renters to recent home buyers, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. From 2006 to 2017, there was a 6% rise in renters who could afford to purchase a home. And like I said earlier, it's somewhere between 20 to 31%. So what I'm telling brokers are, there's a lot of people that are renting houses that really don't understand. And when they did a poll of renters on what they thought they had to have to buy a home, the majority thought that they had to bring in 10% down to actually buy a home. There's a lack of education understanding that they truly can buy a home. Seattle had the largest increase in wealthy renters. So over the last 5 years, just in King County, over 21,000 people now make over $150,000 a year, and they rent an apartment. And that was the largest increase of all major cities in the entire country. We got a lot of tech jobs and a lot of guys that are just, hey, they ride the green bike, you know what I mean? They got the little green bike, okay. And that was over 3.5 million people that were polled. Here's the one that's closer to my heart. In 2005, 11% of adults from 25 to 34 lived with their parents. In 2017, it's 22%. I don't know. Now, I think I'm the enabler in my house. But I would tell you, my wife is incentivizing them to move back, and I really can't figure out what's going on, but they show up more than they used to. Well, on this homeownership rate, what I really wanted to do is show you more of the trend, that we've been going the wrong way. Now, all of a sudden, in 2016, we kind of went, wait a minute, we got to go the other way. And part of that was the fact that millennials really are coming back into the marketplace. We were running at about a 30% ownership of millennials, which is not the number we should be at. And now we're getting back up to about 42%. And they should be in that marketplace 42 to 45%. Put this together just to kind of show you the accumulation. You can see that the renter is going the wrong way. Actually, the renter's going the right way for us, and homeownership is going the right way. See that? So there really is a trend. I am not going to spend a lot of time on this because there's way too much math And I know some of you are in sales, so we don't do math. So the top one is job growth related, but there's really a factoring on, you can actually do a factoring on how jobs create housing. Now, we did this for a new construction job, for how much new construction we'd be creating based on jobs. So we take the jobs since 2015 in the central Puget Sound of 191,000 jobs. You take a factoring of 1.78, you come up with 107,000 people. Homeownership rate, it's at 63%. Sold new construction since 2015, our natural market. And what we have left is the demand for new construction housing. Does that make sense? So then we go on to population and the net new drivers since 2015. And we go 63%, move to Puget Sound, kind of a similar number, just factoring. 1.78 income earners, okay? 63% home ownership rate. And the population created 39,000, the need for 39,000 new jobs. So those two things have created the need for 75,000 new homes just in those 3 counties. Still with me on that? Okay. I put this up here just to give, this was more of a you got to hurry up and buy a house thing, but we've had some good news in the last day or two, so hopefully that'll help us a little bit. But I put the factor up here. It gives you an idea of what interest rates will do and how much house you cannot buy as interest rates go up. Can you guys see that back there? So as it goes up a quarter or a half a point in the interest rate, you lose at a $3,500 payment, you start to lose about $30,000 worth of buying power, depending on the size of the house you want to buy. Here's one I want to show you real quick. When I hear, oh my gosh, interest rates are going up, it's not the good deal it was. Oh yeah? Well, back when I had hair, we bought a house. And my wife and I remember getting so excited that the fixed rate just dropped under 13% to 12 7/8, so we hurried up and closed and signed on. And the 3-year adjustable, which we'd never even heard about, and that was the scariest thing I'd ever heard of, went to 9 7/8, and we said, there's no way we're going to take that chance. 9 7/8, that's not realistic, that's a scam. So we didn't do that. But here's what happened today, let alone today. The Fed came out today and said no more rate increases in 2019. Did you read that? That's a big deal. They were supposed to pop it twice more. I'm not sure why, because it really feels like in the last half of the year, when people started putting the brakes on, they were looking at, whoa, look at that interest rate at 4.49. That's way too much. Oh yeah? Well, okay. Whatever you say. So experts say there's a 40% chance of actually a decrease, but they're really using it just to hold inflation down. And now their prediction for inflation is to be at about 1.8%, but their target is 2%, so they feel they'll be under it a little bit. Maybe one increase in 2020, maybe one, which is great. That means we've got stability really for almost 2 years on interest rates. Now, I know that this is a tough word to use, but we got to figure it out again, because I really honestly, truly feel in my heart that real estate's always one of the best investments you're ever going to make in your life. And the sense of urgency seemed to have disappeared in the second half of last year. And it's another word that somehow we have to get people interested in saying, create ownership as soon as you can. Start creating that wealth in your house as soon as you can. I think one of the reasons that we look at it, if you look at the big picture and you watch Fox or CNN or whichever one of those news networks, you see what the rest of the world is doing? We're actually in pretty good shape. If you take a look at Brexit, and you take in Europe and you take a look at what's going on with China, and you take a look at the other parts of the world that are supposed to be major parts of economies, we're doing better than that. So money is starting to come this way again. And I think that experts feel the recent showing or slowing is just temporary. So whatever went on for about 6 months, they feel it'll be gone within the next few. Couple of things, and we'll get past interest rates. So our 30-year fixed interest rates dropped today to a 13-month low. Hard to believe. So we're back 13 months again to 4.28. Our 15-year, realizing that we stay in our homes for 10 years, possibly now, our 15-year is 3.71. And here's the biggest change. So a year ago, 5% of all mortgages closed were ARMs. Now it's over 9%. So the ARM's back again. And here's the other thing. The average loan amount on an ARM is $700,000. So the people that are getting that ARM obviously feel stronger about where it's going and are in a higher price bracket, correct? Okay. Overall economy is temporary. The economy expanded by 2.9% last year, which is really good. The prediction this year is 2.1%. All that means is, honestly, if it stays above 2%, we're doing okay. That's about all I can share with you about that. And we talked about inflation. I think that they really take a look at it. There's $4 trillion worth of loans they have, and they've been offloading them, which kind of scared everybody. And the Fed came out today and said we'll be done offloading those assets by August, which is a good thing for us because then that money will run to other investments besides taking out money because people are scared. Okay, let's get to a couple interesting things. Did you see what happened in New York? Were you watching that? Did you think it was wrong or right? I thought it was wrong. I took a look at Long Island's median income is $43,000. The median income of any of those Amazon people was $83,000. And then they interviewed the guy in the street and they said, geez, sounded like a pretty good job. I'd like one of those, but I guess I don't get one. So you run a major employer like that out of your town, I think it sends a message to everybody else as well. And I know there's some other downfalls, but here's one thing you ought to take a look at Amazon. I think Seattle now is probably the biggest company town in the country. They, as you can see here, they own or lease going on 14 million square feet of real estate just in Seattle. And you have to take, here's the thing that's unbelievable, I haven't seen this in any other city. You have to take the second largest tenant or commercial building owner all the way to the 42nd and add them all together, and that's what adds up to what Amazon has in Seattle. I've never seen that. Well, maybe Ogden, Utah, where the IRS is just a big gorilla, but other than that, but we're not all running down there looking for an apartment. So 2 through 42 add up to what Amazon has. And now I just saw in the paper last week, they're really concerned in Bellevue because now Oculus, Facebook, Amazon has leased up 2 buildings. There's 2 other technology groups that have leased up buildings in downtown Bellevue. And they're worried about their market now running up because so many square feet has been leased up and those people are not going to drive the bridge. They're going to live on that side. So now the east side is worried about a run up. Let's keep moving here. I just thought this was interesting. Do you know Northgate was the first mall in the country? You guys know that? I didn't know that. And I think at the time it was outdoor and then they put it indoor. It's not going to be Northgate Mall anymore. They're not renewing the leases. And so Northgate Mall is going to look like this. And that's what most of your malls are going to look like. I'm kind of waiting for the Skagit Mall to do this too. When they're sooner or later, they're going to be mixed use. Totem Lake. Do you go 405 at all much? If you go look at what happened to Totem Lake, it's a big mixed use center. It's apartments over top of retail or next to retail together with parking garages and standalone stores. So it's just going to be one big, for those of us that like order, it's one big jumble of buildings is what it's going to be. And it's going to be a whole lot of people living there. So Northgate will now be 1,400 apartment units and a bunch of retail. And if you're a hockey fan, this came out about a week ago. The new NHL team is actually negotiating a lease for the building in the middle to put their practice facility together with another arena attached for like Lloyd Center down in Portland. So an interesting concept. So kind of the U Village concept. Does that make sense? An outdoor mall, no different than what they're going to do in Everett. So if you drive through Everett, well, I take that back. If you crawl through Everett and you look to our river to the left, it's the only river I've seen that doesn't move, but we'll call it a river. And so if you look over there where all that dirt is, and it's been sitting there for years, we've got 1,250 apartment units going in there together with a movie theater, a grocery store, and a whole bunch of mixed-use retail. So one of the best investments, I really think strongly, because especially the waterfront on the Puget Sound side, 300 apartment units, 3 new restaurants, another 140-unit hotel, all going back down on the waterfront. Everett has a chance to be probably one of the best real estate investments towns because we've got a whole lot of consumers that are going to move to that spot. because they might as well stop. Their cars aren't moving anyway. Just go ahead and park next door to us. I'm only going to do this quickly. We are expensive. It is expensive to live here. And now we're the most expensive state. We're number 8 right here. And you can see what it has to do with hourly wage for a 2-bedroom apartment. Most expensive U.S. metropolitan areas. I mean, come on. Does that feel right to you? Does that feel like New York and Santa Barbara? It should cost the same to live in those places as it costs to live in Seattle? It's true. And our rents, when you take a look at our rents, our average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment, it's exactly the same as Boston. Those are big cities. Those are 24-hour-a-day cities. They call us an 18-hour-a-day city. I don't know exactly what that means, but well, we sleep 6 hours maybe, but we're not actually truly a big city, but we have the same pricing as they do. I'm going to throw this in there because I just wanted to share with you what's been going on new construction pricing-wise in central Puget Sound, and then we're going to jump into Whatcom and Skagit here real quick. So our central Puget Sound counties for resale were actually up 5.4%, but you know what really made that work? Kitsap County, down around the corner, their pricing was up 14.7% over last year. And they only have 1.5 months worth of supply of housing there. It's weird how certain marketplaces just went another direction. What I did want to show you is, you see this one right here, the second from the bottom, Pierce County. Do you see that when we were all messing around and dinking around with pricing and everything, they didn't even look at us. Because of their affordability, their price continued to increase. And Thurston County was literally flat because of affordability as well. In 2016, there's 3,300 counties in the US. And in 2016, you know what the #1 population increase in in-migration county was in the country? Pierce. And it wasn't because they expanded the jail. It had nothing to do with that. It was purely the fact that King County was such a strong marketplace that people couldn't afford to live there. So they were commuting to the Tacoma area, which became a really good market. You know what the #2 in the country was? Snohomish County. So both of those marketplaces added 15,000 and 16,000 people. And so in 2018, Snohomish County added 15,700 people again. That possibly is probably the #1 increase in population county in the country again. So these counties in those central Puget Sound areas are living off of the Seattle marketplace still, purely on affordability. Not because of our ability to create units, but purely affordability. Now, those of you builders that are in the room, do I have developer builders? Got a few? Good. So 24 cents, we've done so many different studies. Now 24 cents on every dollar goes towards government intervention within your project. That's your expense. I don't know if you knew that or not. That's big. And we have tried everything we can to lobby for something different, but we don't win that often. And I think the biggest lobbies we have now are usually related to either sprinklers or park mitigation, or one of those areas where you just go, come on, you cannot just throw that number on there. That is not fair. Tell us why you need it. And then it becomes a negotiation. For example, Stanwood tried to throw a $5,000 park mitigation fee at us, and we went and met with them, and they said, well, we just see if you'd go for it. But now that you're here, we can tell that you didn't go for it. So by the time we were done, it was at $500. Then it was at, where's Brian? $1,200? $1,200 by the time we got done negotiating with them. Monroe, Washington tried to throw a $10,000 park mitigation fee at us. And we said, well, are you going to build new parks? Nope. What are you going to do with the money? You're going to put it in the budget. So that 10 wasn't going to go to anything. So rolled it all the way back to where it was before, because you have to have some representation in the deal. Okay, let's keep moving. I'm not going to go through over most of this because most of you can't read it. I just wanted to make sure you saw in 2018, 79,000 closings came in the marketplace. 2017, we had 88,000. 2016, we had 89,000. 2015, we had 87,000. And then we go all the way back to 2005 to get to 89,000. But we almost closed 80,000 in 2018 when they were telling us we had a real estate recession again. Now this year, we are supposed to be able to create about that number of sales in our marketplace, but the only thing that's going to stop us is our ability to create those units, right? So let's get to our local market here. So I wanted to share, because I told them I'd work my way through the Puget Sound area. If you go up here and you take a look at the median price of a home in Snohomish County, it's now at $455, so an increase of 1%. And in February, we actually were down about 2%. If I come down to King County, I'm actually down 2.9%, and then I'm back up 1% in February. So we're still trying to get there. 63% of our listings last year in King County were above list. 66% this year are below list. So we saw a definite change in that marketplace. 24.5% of that market, though, is still taking multiple offers. But last year it was 58%. It was ugly. The sellers were just, gosh, it was no other way to put it. The sellers were just so arrogant. Hey, look, I'm not going to clean the dishes or wash the towels. As a matter of fact, when you buy it, you can clean them and wash them. You can keep them because you're going to pay me too much anyway, so it doesn't matter. You can have it all. Let's get to our market right here. So Whatcom Residential and Skagit Residential. I wanted to cover that real quickly here. So Bellingham the past month had 104 homes sold, and that's about 80,000 people and about 44,000 jobs just in our Bellingham marketplace. If you take a look at where we are, so we didn't pay much attention to what was going on down there, did we? You guys go ahead and fiddle around down there. You do what you're going to do. We're just going to keep doing our thing. So you can see that 2018 to 2019, January, our median price was up 6.5%. Our median price was up 7%, February to February. I think where we're going to suffer is in here. That's not enough product to supply the marketplace. You still have to get more listings in the market. I had 97 new construction listings and 94 in February. We're not moving fast enough. In Skagit County, same idea. We basically zeroed out in 2018, January to January, and we're up about 4.5% in February over February. So strong market, still healthy, affordable pricing for people to actually commute from. But new construction is still going to be our problem. When I look at the new construction market and I figure out that Skagit County itself, the entire county is only building 15 houses a month. That's not good enough. And when I looked at our local market up here, and the year before we were building 26 homes a month in 17, and in 18 we built 25 homes a month and closed them. This is a 220,000 person population. We could eat up twice that new construction wise. The brokers that are here, do you believe that? Do you agree with that? Okay. And that's where we're at. We are still trying to find a way. I remember in 2007, and I'll share some thoughts with you because we're going to have to evolve what we're building. We have to get creative. Our cities have to be with us to allow for different kinds of ordinances, whether they be fee simple townhomes and not do condominiums. That other population, that other product has to come on. And some of the reasons, and I guess I've sat in enough and testified in enough of those hearings with county council and city council that the people that are making the decisions on your land use, this is not a criticism, this is just the truth. They don't know anything about real estate. Every one of you in here knows more about that person in real estate. They're not paid to know about real estate. They're paid to make decisions, and they work for the hospital, or they work for or they own the nursery, or something like that. They don't have anything to do with real estate. So when you feel insecure about your ability to talk about real estate, don't. Because more people need to actually attend those meetings and actually educate the people that are making land use decisions, because your city council and your county council make land use decisions every month. And it's important you have contact with them. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then we'll get the rest of the statistics. So this is how absurd things can be when an idea comes along. I remember back in, I had a son that was a basketball player. And I'll say was, I wish he was in the room. So he was a basketball player, and he had gone to the University of Florida to play basketball. And then he transferred back after his freshman year, and we were at a Stanwood, so that was a long trip. And I would tell you that if you transfer from a Division I to a Division I school, you end up having to sit a year. It's called your redshirt year. So he transferred back, and then a couple of roommates and himself got an apartment off campus, because you aren't going to live in the dorms again. And especially if you've lived in athletic dorms, nobody likes that smell. So you don't go back again. So they end up renting a 750 square foot apartment in downtown Seattle, and the NCAA only allows you $1,100 a month to live off campus in downtown Seattle. You know it ain't gonna go there. You know mom and dad are gonna be coughing up. So I go down there and look at this 750 square foot 3-bedroom apartment that they're living in. Oh, it was let's make a deal. You opened the front door and it was just doors. And you had to figure out what you do. And I walk in that door, and they'd been there for about 3 months, and it was a red shirt year, so they were just screwing around. And I walk in that door and I go, oh my God, this place smells like feet. It's the worst smell I've ever smelled. And 3 months later when I went back down there, it smelled like more feet. So it just got worse. And so I said, okay, nobody's living like this for 3 years. This is ridiculous. So I had the brilliant real estate idea that in the middle of '07, I'd buy a townhome in downtown Seattle. And they had a unit lot subdivision ordinance where all the rest of us just had to build townhomes that were condominiumized, which we knew all our home builders were running away from condominiums or couldn't get a loan or didn't want to get insured. So they had this unit lot subdivision, so they would have attached townhomes with property lines in the party walls. So it wasn't a condominium because there was no common area. You actually owned the property underneath your structure, right? So I thought, this is a brilliant idea. And then about the same time, there were about 225 spec builders in Snohomish County in '07. And then by the beginning of '09, there were 19. And I had breakfast with at least 100 of them after it went south. And it was critical. A lot of you guys have been there, so you know where I'm going. Lives changed. Marriages changed. Finances changed. It was not a good place to be. And I kept thinking, okay, we got to figure out this thing somehow. All of us brilliant 50-plus guys, we buried up to our knuckles in our mortgages because we were so smart about real estate, we bought in '06. So we're sitting there staring at it going, okay, the only people that can buy that hopefully haven't screwed up their credit are millennials, right? People coming out of college about 25 years old, so let's start building townhomes again. Because we can build those like crazy and they don't take as much land use. I can just get a site plan, approve it, get my utilities hooked up, record it, and I'm moving forward. Well, 2 years later, we finally got it approved in Snohomish County and then every city in Snohomish County. And now, X amount of years later, if I take from Everett all the way into North Seattle, there's 1,500 single-family homes in the marketplace. I should say not in the marketplace, in the system for approval, and there's 1,900 townhomes. So now all of a sudden, from Everett all the way into North Seattle, within a year and a half, I'm going to be 60% townhomes because I can't find enough land to put single-family housing. So that includes Linwood, Alderwood Manor, all those places that used to be kind of halfway country. So the reason I told you that story is every marketplace needs options for housing. And the majority of the cities were set up to the fact that I either have 8,400 square foot lots or I have 5-story apartments. They don't have enough housing options to get another type of product. So anytime that you see an opportunity to go ahead and educate anybody at a council level politically, do it. Because you're going to need the option to do that later, because otherwise, who are we going to sell houses to in the 25 to 35? Now here's the goofier thing. 60% of the people that bought those townhomes were 50 and older, and the majority of the home buyers were over 50 single women. Millennials didn't pull it off like I thought they would, but it didn't matter. There was a whole bunch of gals who went, hey, I'll buy that. And it worked out really well. Okay, let's hit this real quick. I wanted to do this just so we can talk a little bit about, I get this question constantly. Okay, yeah, it says January to January, and it says February to February, but that's not when we had the high price. It was last year in the middle of the year. So what I did for your marketplace is, this is Whatcom County. We took the different multiple areas. So here's the Sudden Valley area, right? And you can see where we were at last year, February 18, February 19, and then our peak. And so you can tell what we really did was jump in the middle and then jump down again. And then jump in the middle and jump down again. And I can't see all those. I don't know where they're all at because I got a bad screen on mine. But you can see the different valuations. We had a spike and then we came down. We had a spike and it came down. We had a spike and we came down. Kind of in all those markets. And here's Mount Baker. Here's Nooksack, Linden, Blaine, Ferndale, Meridian, Bellingham, and Glenhaven. Same idea in Skagit. We started at another number like 443 in Anacortes, went up to 564, Now you can see we haven't gotten back there again. Now if anybody wants these screens, I'm glad to send them to you. You can get them through Rob. But we did a bunch of research to try to find out what did it really do? How much did it really go up and how much did it really go down? And as long as we're comparing the first one and the third one and seeing that we landed pretty much about where we were, it's no different than a stock price. And I wish a lot of people would stop treating their house like a stock. They like watch it every 2 months, but that's not how things work. I mean, we have cycles. And what most people don't know is the marketplace actually does drop median price-wise every October, every November, every December, and every January. It rotates in and out about 1% to 2%. We just don't see it because we always compare it year to year, right? We don't compare it month to month. And there's a reason we do that, because we wouldn't look good. So we compare it year to year. So same idea works here. I don't know what you were selling in Lyman for 70 grand, but there you go, there's a mobile home. There were 2 of them, that was all. Snohomish County, kind of along the same lines, but you'll notice that in Snohomish County, we didn't have as much of a change. It stayed pretty tight. It went bang to bang, bang to bang. And again, that's because it's a bedroom community for Seattle. And I'm running away from $650 to buy $450, right? So it looks like a better price just because what I just looked at didn't work for me no matter what. King County, take a look at this one. I hope you didn't buy in Queen Anne, because that's what happened. So the high-end pricing in Queen Anne is where we began to suffer, and it didn't come back again. East side, same thing. Take a look at that. That's West Bellevue. So I went from 2 to 3 down to 2 again. But honestly, I don't think those people cared. So there you go. So 985 to 1,047,000 to 820. And you can see the same thing went on, but even Kirkland Bridle Trails. I want to make sure. Now, this was just to confuse you. But this is, to give you an idea, this chart went back to 1993, and here's 2018, right? And this is King County home prices. I didn't even realize, if you want to go back 26 years, you can see that for 26 years we've been making money in real estate. Does that make sense? I don't know a better way to explain how your home is an investment to show that the marketplace continued to rise for 26 years. Even when we were taking a crash in the market, supposedly, we still didn't end up losing money year over year in King County. Does that one make sense? Okay. That's just as bad. What I wanted to share with you here was just the idea that you can see our supply is still down at the bottom, down in King County, which is what we compare to. Let me get here real quick and we'll go. So, in this marketplace, we're basically months of supply. We're about the same here in Whatcom as this. And I think our days on market, you can see right here where our supply is sitting for Skagit and everybody else. King is now at 1.7. Skagit is at 2.7. We're at 2.8 in Whatcom, months of supply. Remember, 4 to 6 months of supply is static. That's where you should be if you kind of call it a healthy market. So when somebody tells you supply went up 70% and it's still 50% under standard, you're still doing well. Time on market, Seattle's number 2 in the country. Our marketplace up here in Bellingham, it's about 55 days. And in the county, it's 78 days. So literally, you're going to sell a house every 48 days and it's going to close in 30. I'm not going to go too far into this. We are the number 1 crane city in the country. Congratulations. We no longer go to Candy Cane Lane to look at Christmas lights. We go down to the cranes in Seattle and drag our kids around. And that's what we've done here. There's 65,000 units in the system down in the central Puget Sound that they're going to build apartments or condominiums, and 8,000 hotel rooms. People want to stay here. Toss this in here just to give you an idea. This is what's happening. We don't have the same real estate developers we used to have. We have builder developers in most cases. And we have washed our way through this system because of growth management, not allowing the urban growth boundaries to expand. And we're not going to get a shot at expanding the cities or the county's urban growth boundaries again until 2023. It's a 7-year hiatus. They look at it every 7 years. And so whatever supply you have now is what you're going to have for the next 4 years. Takes about 2 years to process, approve, develop, and get your product built to start for model homes. And that works in about every marketplace. So you're 2 years out on getting started on new product that would actually go in the system today. But the idea for the last 2 years, we're over 5,000 units backwards, tells you that is still a thing that we're having trouble with. And I will tell you from working at the state, they are not comfortable with us moving those urban growth boundaries out. So the idea is we're going to live up. We're going to live straight up. They took downtown Everett, and actually it's kind of a good thing because the tallest building in Everett now is no longer the jail, or won't be. I take that back. It won't be. So that's 11 stories. So they took the entire downtown core of Everett and moved it from 12 to 25 stories. So we're going to have skyscrapers in Everett. Nobody will be in them, but we're going to eventually build them. And that's how they're going to create density. You're going to build taller, and that's why some of the moves we've made on condominiums have been such a big deal, because now we're going to have a product that we can build again, that we can hopefully hit a product range and a demographic like actually is in Skagit and some of those other markets. Guys, you have been really nice to sit here and listen. And like I said, at home, I'm outnumbered 3-1, so I don't get to talk at all. So it's really a lot of fun to spare some time with you. And is there any questions? Are you guys okay? Yes, ma'am.
So you talk about going up, and that's our Bellingham is like that, Seattle being all over.
Yeah.
And as far as the Growth Management Act, just because you're right, we're not going to expand the boundaries. They're supposed to find every reasonable alternative to expanding the boundaries. So, however, to go up, it works really well in Seattle because they have the jobs to support the cost. It's very expensive to go up, not to mention the underground parking costs, which are expensive. If we don't have the jobs to support that kind of construction where people can pay that kind of rent or pay that kind of cash to purchase that, then in Bellingham, if we don't have that kind of job growth, where do they go?
So you're still going to see a lot of woody walk-ups. Sorry, those of you guys that build woody walk-ups, that's what we call them. The 3-story walk-up apartments. You're not going to see a lot of what you're talking about. We just looked at a project the other day in Shoreline, and the parking stall, the PT slab type, elevated slab, just the parking stall alone cost $83,000. So throw another $150 per unit on the construction. They're trying to come up with new construction types that are more laminated beams, so they can try to get to 5 to 7 stories that isn't a steel construction. And I'm not saying that product fits you or fits Mount Vernon or fits Blaine or even fits maybe Everett in our northern end, because the product is too expensive to build and maybe our buyers don't want it. But I would tell you, you'd be unbelievably surprised if I were in downtown Everett and I looked at the 6 apartment buildings that are 8 stories or shorter, every one of them filled. The minute they finished them, they filled, because all of those tenants tend to be somewhere between 35 to 70. They want walkability. They don't want to drive everywhere. They walk around town. They have a dog that I see one guy with 14 dogs walking through town every day. He's got himself a pretty good living. And he's taking everybody from all the buildings and working the town. You can build that stuff in downtown Bellingham and still make it work. I've seen it done. They're going underneath on the parking. In Seattle, remember, you don't have to create parking for those buildings because they aren't expecting you to, because they say 70% of all those people in Seattle walk, take the green bike, it's the only way I know how to call it, or they take transit. So they aren't expecting people to put those parking stalls in place, and you cannot put them outside because that's a lot of really expensive real estate. So you go kitty litter box in the ground, or you go PT slab, but most of the time you're talking about not having to create that type of product because we don't have to create parking. It's a difficult product, but it's a long-term product. But here's the sadder thing. It always we take a look at it locals, and we look at that real estate or that opportunity to build that, and we go, holy cow, somebody would be nuts to pay that. And what always happens is somebody from out of town comes in and does it and makes money. And they do it all the time. They do it everywhere, and we just go, there's no way that'll work. And the first guy in has figured it out because he lived in Tacoma, or he lived in San Francisco, or he lived in the Bay Area, or he lived in San Jose, and he knew we had a definite demographic thing. As long as you can figure out a budget to make that number work where your rents, I think you'd be surprised what you get for rents for a secured building like that has walkability in your downtown core. Does that make sense? So it all is about cost to build. What I was talking more about is we have got to find a way to get into townhome living. And we've got to get our cities, and the people in charge of our cities are making decisions to allow for land use within these certain areas that still work. So what I meant by that was they don't always have to change their comp plan because they won't go look at that. But I could go into industrial and say, hey, I want you to change your allowable use. Like, I'll pick a city like Mukilteo. Mukilteo, Washington. I am not going to go big time industrial there. I've already got Boeing and nobody else is actually buying that land. So I've got 200 acres of industrial in Mukilteo that those landowners cannot sell. They've been stuck in industrial for 30 years and nobody will buy it from them. So they've just been paying taxes on it. So we've gone to some of the cities and said, hey, why don't you take some of those areas like that are industrial, and why don't you slide in townhome as an allowable use, and we'll sell it and it's gone and we'll get that product built. Does that make sense? So some commercial zones in other areas, if you talk to the city and the county and say, hey, we don't want you to change your comp plan. We know that's a taboo. We know everybody's going to scream and yell, and we know you're not going to be able to do that for a while. So just change the allowable use. That takes one city council hearing and ratification, and all of a sudden we move on and those people get to sell their property. And you guys get housing stock. I'm all about housing stock. The Growth Management Act does not allow for sale product or housing stock. It only says I have to put a roof over that citizen's head, and everybody that moves here in those 1.2 to 1.6 million people, every one of them can live in an apartment. So we're trying to change growth management to say, okay, 25% of that 1.6 million has to be housing, that for sale stock housing, or otherwise we got a sea and an ocean of renters for the rest of our life. That gentleman had a question.
In the last week, Eric Johnson and Cole convened a special called Seattle is Dying. Is that going to affect downtown real estate like downtown Napa? Will people are afraid to be on the edge of Seattle jurisdiction?
So they put this mic on me, and I got to go in Seattle and talk from time to time. And I would just tell you that that's a lovely city. It's a lovely city. And, but we call it the country of Seattle for a reason. You know, we tried to meet with all of the people in charge politically. And when they found out we were involved, even though we called ourselves the Affordable Housing Council, and even though they knew that about every 2 years we're tossing about $500,000 into the political realm, they wouldn't return our email, wouldn't return our phone call, and if we sent them something in the mail, they mailed it back. Because now, I would tell you, there's a different party going on there now. One of the county council people, so the 3 people like Bruce Harrell and the 2 other people, Bagshaw and one other one, they've been on there for years, and they've decided not to run again. And so the first people that jump back in are Socialist Democrats. I hope some of you kind of shook your head like I did. So everybody's allowed to do whatever they want, but those 3 probably have the best chance of winning, so you'll have 4 Socialist Democrats on the council in Seattle voting on all of your land use issues. So Seattle had a vote this week that they finally got through that's been out there for 4.5 years. They call it the MHA. So it's the Housing Affordability Act. So what they did was they divided Seattle into 27 burgs. So I got West Seattle, I got North Seattle, I got Windermere, I got Wedgwood, I got all these little different burgs. And they went to them and they said, every one of you guys have to start taking some density. It can't just be these 50-story buildings in downtown. So they redesigned so that everybody now has their own little town, literally, and that they made them take higher density and stacked housing. But what they did within that housing is they said, yes, you're going to take housing density, but 25% of all your buildings are going to be for affordable housing, which means it's supplemented housing, and so your apartment building is going to have 25% affordable or supplemented housing or Section 8 housing. So it's a different city, but without a doubt, the condominium market, you could sell 2,000 condominiums a year down there if you could find a price range. So it's just a different style of living, and those people are evolving. But you'd be really surprised at how many people live in Seattle that are intentionally moving out of Seattle. They don't like the politics, they don't like the taxes, they don't like any of those things going on, and they're pushing further south into Shoreline and other markets just because who they are as people doesn't fit where Seattle, and I'm not criticizing, I'm saying that, well, yeah, I am. So I'm just saying that the group is kind of like, okay, the groundswell says we're going in this direction politically. Well, honestly, I don't want my taxes going for that. So I'm agreeing to just get off the bus at this exit and go over here, and you guys can fight it out. It's your town now. And you can figure out how to pay for it. Any other thoughts? Any other questions, Scott? Are we good? Guys, you've been really gracious, and without a doubt, I can't leave here without a sales pitch. Use Chicago title. Thanks. Appreciate your help. Thanks.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
doing that.